English speech, Rights of Women in Islam, by Mrs. Matina Hakim Sahiba, Secretary Ishat, Pama Lajna UK.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Respected Sadhu Sahiba, my dear sisters present here with us, and my fellow sisters listening to us all around the globe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I greet you all with the salutations of peace and blessings of Allah Almighty unto you all. This morning's address on the rights of women in Islam has been a long-standing contentious ground of discussions and intense debates in today's contemporary world. A quick survey in the room will reveal that every Muslim woman or girl present here will have had at least one or two or all the above questions. Why are Muslim women oppressed? Why are Muslim women silent and meek in public? Are you being forced to wear your veil? I'm sure you don't have a say or consent in the way your affairs go. And the list goes on and on and on. These and many other misconceptions are the lived experiences of Muslim women, unfortunately, that still plague the conversation surrounding rights of women in Islam. These dominant mainstream narratives have victimized Muslim women in different ways by appropriating Islamic texts to justify discrimination against women and impose social and legal restrictions on women's rights. These assertions, as we all know, are farther from the truth. Now, to understand the rights, honor, dignity, and status of women in Islam, it is sufficient to judge the position of women before the advent of Islam. Before the advent of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, women were bound to enslavement and servitude, and most often their positions were worse than animals. In pre-Islamic Arabia, particularly, and other parts of the world, female infanticide practices run rife as female children were considered an evil omen. Women were not entitled to property and could not receive shares of wealth in the event of the demise of their fathers or husbands. Once married, women were declared properties of their husbands, and in no circumstance could they demand separation, no matter how afflicted they were, with atrocious customs including selling women as commodities, and even powers that summarily put women to death for mundane acts. In addition to this, women had no rights over their children or any say in domestic affairs. They simply did not hold a status within society. Therefore, all avenues and authorities that would have otherwise served as a sense of comfort, fulfillment, and the very essence of their being in all spheres of life rather became a life of distress and condemnation. Contrary to other religions and societies, which regarded women as being possessed of inherent sin and wickedness, the Holy Quran contains hundreds of teachings which apply to both men and women alike. Islam first conclusively established and safeguarded the rights of women 1,400 years ago. Rights that eluded and still continue to elude women in the Western world. Any rights that have been granted to women in recent times have been a result of necessity rather than a deep desire for women's progress. The promised Messiah alayhi salam said, "No other religion has safeguarded the rights of women as Islam has done." It lays down an injunction so succinctly: just as men have rights upon women, so do women have rights upon men. Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 29. There is a plethora of specific verses from the Holy Quran which address themselves to men and women, dealing with either their physical differences or the role they each have to play in society. Surely, men who submit themselves to God and women who submit themselves to Him and believe in men and believe in women, and obedient men and obedient women, and truthful men and truthful women, and men steadfast in their faith and women steadfast in their faith, and men who are humble and women who are humble, and men who give alms and women who give alms, and men who fast and women who fast, and men who guard their chastity and women who guard their chastity, men who remember Allah much and women who remember Him. Allah has prepared for all of them forgiveness and a great reward. Holy Quran, chapter 33, verse 36. This verse single-handedly sets the premise for which women are regarded in an equal sense. In this verse, Allah Almighty tells us that by following a certain way of life, both men and women can attain the same spiritual heights. There are no double standards in Islam. The requirements of piety are the same, and if these conditions are met in constant remembrance of God, then both men and women can achieve nearness to God, and as such, enjoy all the social and political rights, with only their spheres of activities and duties being different. It is perhaps the difference in duties that are usually misconstrued or deliberately misunderstood by critics of Islam to further their hostile narratives and agenda. However, the Holy Quran further states, "Whoso acts righteously, whether male or female, and is a believer, we will surely grant him a pure life, and we will surely bestow on such their reward according to the best of their works." Holy Quran, chapter 16, verse 98. This verse vouchsafes a perfect principle that establishes a body of edicts that gives full protection to the rights of women, making them equals of men both in the spiritual and religious spheres of life, giving them an independent position, granting them proprietary rights, and making their responsibilities and rights as part of divine law. These rights include, but are not limited to, the rights to education, the rights to a choice of marriage partner, the choice to occupation and residence, inheritance, property ownership, leadership, maintenance, divorce, and socio-political standings. As time will not permit me to delve into all the blessed rights we have been bestowed upon us, I will further elaborate on rights that are heavily contested in today's society. The protection and championing of these rights in Islam have been outlined in all aspects of the life of a girl child from the moment she is born. She is presented with equal rights over her parents, as is with a male child. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "If anyone has a female child and does not bury her alive, or slight her, or prefer his male children to her, Allah will bring him to paradise," as narrated by Ahmad. This hadith advocates instantly for the right to life of females in a time where this eluded them. This set a pace for a new dawn of treatment of women. Similarly, when we move to education, the stereotypes and toxic narratives label Muslim women as uneducated and timid, whereas in reality, Islam mandates acquiring knowledge as obligatory for both males and females, thereby dispelling the grounds for this narrative. In this regard, women have the full freedom to acquire knowledge with no obstruction enabling them exhibit their intellectual, spiritual, and emotional roles within Islam, as is with the prime example of Hazrat Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, who was an early jurist and transmitter of a large compilation of Islamic teachings. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, placed great importance and value upon the education and moral training of women. He likened this to the quest of knowledge for believers, both men and women alike, as a lifelong pursuit from the cradle to the grave. It is therefore no surprise the founder of the oldest university in the world was an African Muslim woman, Fatima al-Fihri, in Morocco between the 10th and the 12th century. After inheriting a large fortune, a right bestowed upon her, she established a center of study still recognized today as the oldest ongoing higher tertiary education institution in the world. In his address at the National Waqf an-Naw Ijtima in UK in the year 2017, Hazrat Khalifat al-Masih V, worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, may Allah be his helper, said, upon his advent, the promised Messiah alayhi salam emphasized the spiritual and moral training of men and women and encouraged them to be educated. In fact, there was a time when the promised Messiah alayhi salam himself used to personally conduct religious classes for women. Through his blessed guidance and subsequently through the caliphate of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community worldwide, Ahmadi women came to understand the significance and value of gaining an education and seeking religious knowledge on par. Certainly, throughout its existence, our Jamaat and community has continued to promote and support the education of women and girls with many programs and schemes that have been set up to facilitate this, such as religious and secular book club programs, trainings, and student-tailored organizations. In the case of marriage, the common misconception about women in Islam is the narrative of no consent to their choice of partners, a narrative that is furthest from the true teachings of Islam. In marriage, women are at liberty to choose their life partner, ensuring full respect to the woman's right, dignity, and honor. In this regard, no one is superior except in piety and good deeds, as highlighted in the Holy Quran, chapter 30, verse 22, where Allah Almighty says He has created both men and women as a company for one another. This verse highlights the fact that marriage is treated as a basis of social life and the beginning of family life for both parties, and hence, both parties have been accorded rights over each other to help make efforts to continue the human race, foster their children, and live in peace and tranquility. Now, in the same arena of marriages, through valid marriages, a mutual right of inheritance is established, and women are entitled to this. Women are entitled to love and affection from their spouse as well as their dower and maintenance, which is a very significant right of women and is to be discharged cheerfully without any censure, hurt, or patronization as commanded in the Holy Quran, chapter 65, verse 8. let him who has abundance spend out of his abundance, and let him whose means of subsistence are straitened spend out of what Allah has given him. The establishment of these rights to inheritance serve as an empowering tool for women to establish financial capital in their own right, a trait that has been heralded in the modern-day neoliberal societies. Women are considered one of the important two pillars of the society in Islam, and as such, women have the freedom and were granted the rights to inheritance and property ownership 1,400 years ago, a right that eluded women in the Western world till the 18th century. The pre-Islamic customs relating to succession and inheritance were biased, vindictive, and unreasonable in most cases. However, Islam ensured the rights of 6 classes of persons never to be deprived from inheritance or property ownership. Among these 6 classes of persons are the father, the husband, and the son. And equally on the female side, the mother, the wife, and the daughter. As well as allowing them the right to earn their own income, Islam grants women the right to choose their own occupation. However, it is only in the last century that the Sex Discrimination Removal Act of 1920 allowed women in the Western world to enter professions such as law and accountancy. Meanwhile, over 1,400 years ago, Islam established this right to women with caution consideration to keep in mind that our choices benefit the society at large and does not deprive our families and children of maternal love, care, affection, and proper education and training. Further to this, in the divine scheme of regulating the relationship between men and women, Islam has assigned a position of dignity and honor to women in the case of separation. Such beneficent regulation is essential for peace to prevail. It is in this light that the Holy Quran emphasizes that God Almighty, in His perfect wisdom, has granted women the right to divorce. As mentioned earlier, women had no rights to separation or divorce in the face of any afflictions they were subjected to. However, through the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, all these cruelties were swiftly laid to rest. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, announced that God Almighty has especially entrusted him with the task of safeguarding the rights of women. He declared in the name of God Almighty that men and women, by virtue of their common humanity, were equal. And in their coexistence, just as men have certain rights over women, similarly, women have certain rights over men. Therefore, both parties were granted the form of divorce to their marriage, where each party has the right to offer and the other party has the right to accept. And when this is done, the marriage could be dissolved via a series of principled processes on rational grounds. This rectification of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, marked a new departure in the history of divorce legislation, a legislation which did not come into effect in the Western world till the early 1930s by the Matrimonial Causes Act, which then provided grounds for divorce, the same for women and men. Now, my dear sisters, another heavily contested misconception is that women have no right to leadership or a say in their affairs. However, socio-economic and political rights bestowed in Islam to women occurred 1,400 years ago, and this still continues to elude the Western world till about 1928, where women were allowed to vote in the UK and were allowed in Parliament by the Parliamentary Qualification Act of Women in 1918, which enabled women to stand as leaders and members of Parliament. Islam, however, ensured the political independence of men and women alike. Muslim women have been bestowed with this socio-economic and political rights as exhibited by early Islam till date, based on the general principle that duties are closely linked to human ability and are obligatory on people to fulfill them if they are able to do so. During the advent of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, Muslim women were active socially and politically and were allowed and encouraged to participate in the process of building the Medinan society, and they proved to be up to task. One can infer that their socio-political activities, as defined in today's contemporary terms, began the moment they embraced Islam and defended the new religion against fierce opposition both in their families and the society at large. A long line of women ranging from the mother of believers, Hazrat Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, who was a successful entrepreneur and elite figure in Mecca in her own right, and became the first Muslim in accepting her husband, our beloved Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, revelation, and providing him crucial emotional support during the period of the emergence of Islam. Similarly, we can draw another example from Hazrat Amara, may Allah be pleased with her, who was a female companion of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, renowned for her unparalleled bravery in protecting the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, and the name of Islam, just to mention a few. The long-standing torch of women in this arena has been passed down to women in this era, as we see women in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community embodying these teachings of Islam under divine guidance of the Caliphate, to spearhead leadership positions in auxiliaries created for women and girls, championing and advocating against injustices within society, as well as actively taking part in delegations that propose policies that are taken into consideration for the benefit of the community and the society at large in these very grounds. Our beloved spiritual leader, Hazrat Mizr Masroor Ahmed, may Allah be his helper, has referred to women as nation builders and encouraged us to take such roles diligently and execute them to the best of our abilities, as with the fundamental and vital role of establishing and developing a nation lies with women, as we hold the key to training further generations. These can only be the reflection of true teachings of Islam that silences critics and their unfounded allegations. When critics of Islam have indeed objected with the rhetoric to point out, okay, you have all these rights, why then do Muslim countries of today fail to implement these rights or are failing to implement majority of them? Hazrat Khalifat al-Masih, may Allah be his helper, has responded to these allegations by saying, the allegation of denying women's rights cannot be pinpointed on the teachings of Islam. Nobody can allege that Islamic laws usurp the rights of women. Nobody can justifiably raise the objection that the law-bearing book, the Holy Quran, that we take pride in, and that covers every aspect of law and gives the best solutions on every aspect of life for Muslims, eliminates the rights of women. If anyone raises this objection, it is completely wrong and unjust. It is entirely correct that there is a difference between secular and Islamic philosophy in distributing the rights between men and women. As Islam is a religion based on human nature that assigns rights according to the intrinsic disposition of man and woman, according to their respective capabilities. In today's world, my dear sisters, it is easy to become influenced by the discourse and outpouring sentiment on women's rights. However, we should stand firm in our belief of our faith as the standard bearers of women's rights ascribed to us by Allah Almighty in the Holy Quran. This comprehensive code of conduct encompasses and upholds the rights of women in all spheres of life, with a whole chapter dedicated to women in the Holy Quran. We are exceptionally fortunate and blessed by Allah Almighty with the advent of the promised Messiah, alayhi salam, who has continued to enlighten the world about the true teachings of Islam. When next you're encountered with the inevitable narratives and questions of why are you oppressed, my dear sisters, let us echo that we are liberated by the tenets of our faith as championed by our exemplary beloved Holy Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, who was sent as a mercy to mankind. When next you come across someone who tells you you do not have a consent in your life or any associated stereotypes, let us retort that these rights were bestowed to us 1,400 years ago before we were born and will be vouchsafed long after we are gone for future generations of Muslim women. It is therefore incumbent on us all to know the rights of women accorded to us by our faith, and to understand and realize the actual position of women in Islam, as our rights and status have been established and are eternally protected by Allah Almighty and His noble Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. We must continue to proclaim these beautiful teachings of Islam at every opportunity and space we occupy, to further eliminate the prevailing misconceptions regarding women's rights in Islam. Awareness of true Islamic teachings is essential and also necessary to change the dominating mentality of the masses. May Allah Almighty enable us to continue to impart this knowledge in our children, create awareness and be ambassadors of Khilafat in our societies, and be living embodiments of these rights to reflect the true teachings of Islam to the world. Ameen. Jazakallah.